Right. Hello and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Are you reeling my piece also? Am I visible now to our Zoom friends? Okay. Excellent. So thank you for joining us. I can see lots of friends joining us virtually as well, and I just want to acknowledge, firstly, my co-panelists who are here to present this session. We have Shilpa Gupta, who's been, who's an extremely experienced counselor who's done some phenomenal work over the years. And Shilpa is currently with UWC in Japan. She's worked with some very fine schools here in India and done tremendous volunteer work as well as a counselor. And she's going to be sharing with us some perspectives from a school perspective. And we also have Hansa Sachdeva, who's done some phenomenal work on the university side. Hansa's worked with Ahmedabad University, is now with BML Munjal University. And thank you, Hansa, and thank you, Shilpa, for joining us and for bringing perspectives from the school and the university side. I also want to welcome all our virtual guests. I hope you are feeling the hybrid experience and that you feel like you're with us here and that you have a productive conference so far. This session is primarily meant for universities to explore how they can collaborate better with schools, but schools can also benefit from this session by nudging universities to do more than just come and visit and meet their students, right? So I think on both sides, we can, there'll be a context, and I can see there are a fair number of school delegates. I don't know, I don't see enough people on Zoom. I have to say that we've been very nervous about all of the technology and the hybrid world, etc. So if we are making mistakes along the way, and sometimes we spotlight, my bald head instead of the slides, or we show you and you are spotlit and you are doing something else, please forgive us. We ask in advance for all the goof ups that we make. So I'm going to get started here. Most universities have always had a perspective where they're looking to build the university on the inside. And what I'm really talking about here today is the opportunity to build the university from the outside. And, it's like putting a building together. For the most part, where you dig the foundation and where you actually have the construction is important, but all the materials are coming from outside. The cement, the mud, the expertise, there's a lot that comes from outside, and there are external stakeholders who are not directly involved in the decision making within a university, but they can actually help build a university. And so that slide, if you can bring my slide back on the screen for me, so that I can see my slide. What we are saying is that a university can actually be built through government, industry involvement, school involvement, the alumni getting involved, and all of the enrollment management function can actually be a collaborative effort. We have looked at enrollment management and, recruitment and student recruitment and outreach from this very narrow prism that we'll get this person who will go out and recruit students. And they bring students. We have so many number of students that we want on campus, etc. And it's like, frying this lone fish in the pan or whatever, right? I mean, you just let this person out without the university collectively feeling the ownership of who we are attracting. One good student brings 10, one bad fit student stops 10. So 10 good fit students are going to bring 100 automatically. We see, I studied a lot of examples of universities that invested many years with very little success in recruitment and enrollment management. And there are those universities that in a short span of 2 or 3 years actually had a huge enrollment growth. And the difference was that those who had a huge enrollment growth took a holistic approach. They actually considered enrollment management as a building block and not as an isolated function. Just like the engineering school operates separately, the business school, there is limited collaboration. Similarly, enrollment management often operated, oh, I told you we can take 100 people class, but you only were able to bring us 70 people. Go out and visit, do, more advertisements, etc. So, there's been a lot of pressures on admission professionals, and that's really come out because, we've really focused on, we've worked in these individual silos. And what we are really saying is, if you want to succeed with enrollment management, you want to make your university a magnet. You've got to become a magnet, and you've got to have ownership across departments and really not tell the enrollment management, go and recruit students. You are the country rep here in India, it's your responsibility. It's not possible. It's too cluttered a landscape. There are 700, 800 universities actively doing outreach. You're not going to be able to succeed as a lone wolf. Enrollment management in isolation is not going to succeed at an institution. So what do we need? We need a multilateral effort. Academics, alumni, student services, the career services, the outreach, admissions piece, they all come together. And that is what we are advocating, not a unilateral effort from enrollment management or admissions and outreach. And unless this happens, there is no future, especially if you are not a big brand institution which already has reached a certain height. If you are an institution that is having to struggle year on year for students, or enrollment remains a challenge, it is because it has not become, it is not a function that is owned by the whole university. The university has not yet become a magnet. And the reason the university has not become a magnet is because we've not impacted other areas. We've not leveraged other areas within an institution, the alumni and all of the other pieces that I talked about. So if we were to engage with schools, therefore, and the whole university was to engage with schools, what are the areas that we could impact schools with? We often tend to go looking for a counselor in a school, and there is no counselor in most schools. You figured that out by now, right? I mean, Shilpa will tell you that she got 5,000 emails because poor thing, she was the only counselor. Probably there were only like 10 counselors in India. So the ones where they have a counselor, everybody writes to them. But what will you do to DPS in some remote part of Tamil Nadu where they don't have a counselor? We struggled and we gave up because we were trying a single point entry, which is the principal or the counselor, to set up something that we will do with the school to meet their children and introduce them to our institution. I am saying this is a failed approach now. This is not going to work. We need to look at the school as a whole and say, where are the areas that we can impact schools? Curriculum, extracurricular activities, administration in schools, we can have a positive impact in. Financial aid and scholarships, which we also use with admission, but it has to be used strategically and smartly. Research. Schools have an increasing need for their students to get involved in research. And the counseling office, which is what we are chasing, but there isn't any counseling office in many schools. So the access will come through the other areas. I will want to give you a quick couple of examples and then hand over to Shilpa for her perspective. But there are institutions that actually have research programs in their universities for undergraduate for high school students. University of California, Santa Cruz is one example. There are many other institutions where they involve in a structured manner high school students in research. This is now incredibly valuable for a school because the teachers in school get involved as well with this effort. Extracurriculars. There are, American School of Bombay collaborated with the Mount Holyoke College, and they had this, Shakti MHC Shakti program, where they actually went out and brought women. So they took on a social cause really through this, but the kind of coverage that they received, because they used to bring these women from different parts of the country, class 11 and 12. There's a lot of people that knew about this program, and there was an aspiration created around it. Another example is, scholarships. The way we use scholarships is really like discounts instead of really creating aspiration and focusing on merit, etc. And I would really encourage us to relook at the way we use scholarship. I want to give you another example on how a very popular Indian institution has done it. O.P. Jindal Global Universities actually used one of their faculty, Dr. Sanjeev Sahani, to train thousands of teachers in many different countries. Now, this has nothing to do with student recruitment. In fact, there are many other examples of teacher training. University of Waterloo did it with its maths workshop. You have so many other. University of Queensland is doing some great work, engaging school counselors. There are great examples. But this one was actually led by, their outreach department. And they actually did 30,000 teachers across 2,000 schools. They trained. Now, enrollment management is not going to be, this is not an admissions guy going out and saying, hey, come listen to O.P. Jindal. Teacher training and online delivery, 400 plus teacher training programs free of cost, and also launched a free YouTube channel addressing. Now, teachers are getting empowered. Naturally, there's going to be an affinity and an interest in that institution. And you can see their enrollment numbers are high. And then, of course, they collaborated on other fronts as well. So I want to just stop speaking there and invite Shilpa to share some perspectives on this topic from a school side. I'll change the slides.
Morning, everybody. So I think the conversation today is really point on, and we are all struggling, whether we are at the school side or at the university side. We are really struggling with student engagement with the university. I'm sure most of you would agree with that. And I really want to talk a little bit about what are the different challenges we faced in this virtual world. Most of you know that, so basically a lot of times when students would meet with the university rep, they would get a sense of what the university wants through the interactions that they've had, also by visiting universities. So obviously that did not happen. So what is the university culture? So whenever when as counselors we speak with the students, when we are doing their college list, we would automatically have a sense of, okay, this student is like this and this is a good fit university, right? Which I felt even as counselors, at least as a counselor, I was challenged. I was not able to fit a student into a university because I was meeting students also virtually. And obviously, I did not understand which university would be a good fit. So I felt that it was very, very difficult for students to really differentiate the university culture and finding the right fit. So that was one challenge we faced. Zoom fatigue we all faced, not just not just in recruitment, but even during classes. For most of my workshops I used to meet with the students once every 8 days in a workshop style format. And initially it started with students and the cameras off, right? I really had to struggle because as a counselor, I really want to see their faces. I want to see when do I see that sparkle in their eyes and when is it twinkling? So for me, that camera involvement was a must, right? So what did I do? I basically engaged in a lot of different kinds of interactive activities with them. I wanted to make sure that I get to hear from them even if their cameras were off. But yes, Zoom fatigue was a big thing. Then the virtual college search, I sometimes felt definitely became very self-guided. Universities would come to us, do their presentations, and students had their cameras off. No one even asked a single question. And if students are not asking any question, you and I are adults, we know that they haven't heard. They just probably switched on the Zoom call because the counselor told them to, and they are either sleeping or doing their thing, right, or on their social media. So obviously, engagement-wise, there's really no engagement. So it was definitely very self-guided. So whenever we had to do the college list, they would research, right? So which is not an effective tool of college research. Lack of reliable technology and internet access. Yes, this has been a challenge, and we know that going forward also hybrid is here to stay, right? Even if the pandemic is becoming endemic, so we know that this is always going to be there, and we need to evolve our recruitment strategies. So that's something that we really need to talk about. Then one other thing that stood out during the whole cycle was that record number of applications at selective institutions. All of us pretty much got, counselors got an email that universities have extended their decisions date because they had a 50% increase and a 40% increase. But there were also lots of institutions, smaller institutions, which are not that selective, which saw a decline in applications. So that means the balance went haywire somewhere, right? How do you fix that? So those were some challenges that universities faced and schools faced. So I just want to now touch a little bit about what went, can we just do the next slide? Yeah, so what went right, and how can we change and something with university recruitment, right? So I know that most of you have tried to evolve the way you are meeting with students and the way you are interacting with college counselors. But I still feel that there's lots that can be done. And Ganesh has really touched upon some very, very good points. And I just want to elaborate a few things that really worked well with my students last year. So, virtual tours, right? So virtual tours, a lot of times when universities would come to me and show me presentations and show me a little bit about their university, I would always think about, why are my students expected to see this now when the university rep is on the call, right? I mean, this is something the students can even see when they are at home at 1 o'clock in the night, in the morning. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I would always think that why do students need to see a virtual tour while you are presenting, right? Your time on the Zoom is important for interaction with the student. So, thinking about how you can share the presentation in advance, thinking about how you can make it more interactive. Now, one such example really stands out to me was the 3 UK reps from University of Manchester, Edinburgh, and Warwick. They did one presentation with our students, and it was so much fun. I gave them a 45-minute slot. It ended up becoming 90 minutes. Students were engaged till the end. I had an audience of 210 students. Everybody was on the call for 90 minutes. Can you ever believe it? I was shocked, but their presentation was so good. And just to let you know what they did, they basically created a very interactive, so they had a lot of Q&A throughout their presentation. They also had students do some activities during the presentation. So nobody was expected to see any virtual tour or anything, but they had questions like, okay, who can tell me which page do you see, which of the colleges provide an anthropology major? So what happened? Students all logged on to their websites, all logged on to their course pages to see which is the university that offered this. So how did it benefit the university? A, students got to see the website. B, students got to navigate how to look at the academic courses, right? Which sometimes as college counselors, we are struggling all the time, right? So I think thinking differently on how you want to present to the students is extremely important. Now, again, this is obviously your office that is doing it. So, and this is again here to stay. What Ganesh says, yes, involve the whole university, that I'm going to touch upon. But even as when you are presenting, it's important for you to think and evolve your strategy when you're presenting to the students. Do not think of having a presentation and expecting students to get engaged during that time. Then we also had lots of workshops, and so I'm sure whoever's hosted US workshops have already done this essay workshop with USC and Amber from Michigan State, right? I think amazing, right? We did it with our 3 different grades, and it was just a hit with every single grade, and whoever I've spoken with has great things to share. I did take a lot of these ideas from a counselor, Samir from Legacy School, and Purvi from Jamnabai, and I think all of us had the same examples. Now, why are just these university reps standing out? That means they are doing something differently, right? And honestly, most of these schools are on our children's list. So automatically, if you connect with the students, they will have you on their list. So that's how you can have effective recruitment. And then, like I said, please email your presentations beforehand, and your time at the school with the student needs to be about effective question and answers. It really needs to be about that engagement. We don't want children having their cameras off and not speaking with you. The whole idea is to speak with you. And one thing that really stood out to me in a meeting with a student a couple of days back is, he's like, Miss, can you give me a list of colleges that promote social justice and global commitment on campus? Honestly, I didn't know the answer. I mean, I do know, but I was like, yeah, I mean, why are universities not talking about their culture on campus? When we were visiting in person, it was so much easier, but virtually, how are you engaging students with what your university culture is? So start thinking about how to do it. One thing that stands out to me, I don't know how many of you are aware of a UniBuddy website, but I usually refer students to that website. Then there's another one called collegeexpress.com. It has a list of schools, universities that can define universities based on their culture. So, but when you are speaking with the students, make sure that you are telling the students about what your university culture is. Because when we are talking to them, we tell them, look at good fit. And the fit is not just academic fit, right? The students are going to be with you for the next 3 or 4 years of their life. So even a cultural fit and a social fit is extremely important. Yeah, so next slide. So what are the programming that worked? I know Ganesh spoke about University of Queensland, but how did it help? We did see a lot of students after attending the workshop wanting to apply to University of Queensland. Now, this was a real good academic engagement. The students got to understand the quality of education, the quality of teaching at their institution. Again, nothing to do with your office, but everything to do with your faculty. So how can you engage your faculty better in leading such workshops at schools? The Entrepreneurship Bootcamp by IE University, I mean, IE has been doing some amazing academic workshops for the last couple of years, and I think it's really working well with the students. Anybody who wants to apply to Europe is definitely having IE on the list. So, think about such programmings that can really impact students' decision on choosing that university. Then we did have a lot of art schools do portfolio, and this obviously was there even before the pandemic, but I think this really works well with the students. Again, if you see, this is also a kind of an academic engagement. So all in all, academic engagements are great. I don't want to carry on with the list, but I do also want to touch upon the math contests by University of Waterloo. They have these, and I don't want you all to start doing contests for students because they anyways do lots of tests. But if as a collaborative tool, if there's anything that you can offer which is like a challenge or which is like a fun competition, I think do that. Introduce your universities to the students in a fun manner. Let it not be too boring, right? Because students' engagement or retention has really reduced. So how can you make it more interesting and more interactive in whatever little time you have with them? And then, yes, engage with us, because we are the ones who finalize the college list with the students. So effective engagement with us is very important. And 2 programs that stand out to me the last year that I did was, one was a program by a consortium of Dutch universities. They did a 3 days counselor boot camp, and it was an amazing collaborative experience. The universities really got together and shared some very, very valuable info. And same as with the Czech universities. I would never have sent any students to any of the Czech universities in the past. But this year, I have so many of them having Czech universities on their list, right? So it has been an eye-opener to me as a counselor. So make sure that you put yourself, you put yourself out there even for the counselors. Don't forget us in the whole process. Yes, meeting students is important, but we are also very important. And yeah, thanks for listening. I think now we are, yeah, now Hansa can take it up.
We hear you loud and clear. Far be it from me or any other university to forget the counselor. A very good afternoon to everybody, and I hope I'm audible to those listening in virtually. So I think you touched upon a very important point just now, and that really is the core of the mandate that every university enrollment official carries with them. That mandate, no worries, I think this is fine. I'm probably facing that camera, yeah. So I think that mandate really is about right fit admissions. It is the old concept that admissions is really responsible for the reputation of an institution. In a sense, if we do our job well and we get the right quality of student onto campus, that student is going to be more involved on campus, whether it is offline or online, and then that in turn is going to lead to better learning, better life outcomes, and finally establish the reputation of the institution. So why is it that the IIMA is the IIMA? Because they have a process which identifies students for many, many years who are absolutely right fit for them. Once those right fit students come on board, they are ready for the kind of challenges that an IIMA puts in front of them. That quite often means that they're going to be up all night. It means that they will fail in all their exams in their first semester. But despite all of that, they are deeply involved, deeply engaged, and when they exit the institution, they go on to significantly contribute. Now that really is a role model for all universities and institutions in the higher ed space. But now the question of what is right fit. It used to be so simple. It used to be a world once upon a time where you looked at a mark and you said, hey, this student is right fit for me. So Stanford, for example, does say, even today on its website, that the primary criterion for admission to Stanford is academic excellence. Up front, this is what we look for, this is right fit for us. The most important credential for evaluating your academic record is your high school transcript. I understand that some of those who are on Zoom couldn't hear me. I hope you can all hear me now. And I'm going to just quickly say that the definition of right fit for a university is actually changing. It used to be purely about academics, about a high school transcript, and that was a relatively easy ask. But when I have joined the various institutions that I've worked with, the challenge has now become understanding the personal strengths, characteristics, non-academic strengths of the student in order to ensure that they will flourish on our campus. It's no easy ask, but if we are able to do that, it essentially will lead to the establishment of the institution, and that's the role we play. Next slide, please. So what is it that we need to do from the university perspective to achieve that. The first is, of course, that we look at our own admissions rubrics. I'm happy to say that neither of the universities that I've been involved with recently have actually said that it's just about the grades. And I say this time and again, that thank God we've left behind the world of 99.99999 whatever it is percent. Hopefully we're all contributing to a much happier student by leaving that behind. So we have left that behind and we've experimented. The experiment here is, of course, Georgetown McDonough School of Business, which wants students to tweet why they wish to attend its programs. But on a more serious note, there have been many very rigorous initiatives, innovations by universities to see how do we change our rubric to adapt and involve the idea of cultural fit. So honestly, that onus is on us, because it is very difficult for a counselor to be able to uniquely understand how this student will fit in terms of the culture of the overall institution. So we all, as university specialists, are looking at words that define our universities. And we've moved away from simply saying things related to the academic culture of the institution. All of you would be familiar with that. All of you would know that these are interdisciplinary institutions. This is how they actually assess students. These are the kind of assessment mechanisms that they look at going forward. That's all the academic culture. But what we're talking about right now is the university as an institution and what it really stands for. And so many of us in the university space, including some of the universities we've talked about, have innovated and looked at measures to assess, will the student really fly on our campus? So it became not just about identifying the right kind of student, but also identifying if we are the right education for that particular student. I'm going to give you an example. So this is the secret sauce in an admissions office. I can't talk about it too openly because each one of us has our own secret sauce. But for example, assessing an entrepreneurial mindset. For example, understanding whether they are a fit with a progressive culture or a relatively conservative culture. For example, looking at how innovation-minded the student is. These are all parameters that we're looking at, but we came across severe challenges. So our rubrics are changing, and expect more in this space. Expect our rubrics to start looking very, very different, and also the mechanisms for participating in admissions. You all know video interviews are happening, but also pre-recorded videos, so on and so forth. All of that will play out. But we're facing challenges. And this is to take you behind to say, what are the challenges we really see? One is, how do you implement at scale? So in a small number, you can really get to know the student and see if they're a fit. But what if you're talking to a very large number? How do you handle it at scale? The other issue that came up is that of subjectivity. And this is where my first point comes in, where we're saying that, yes, we're looking at cultural fit. Yes, we're defining as universities what that is. Please go to the George Washington University. They put it out there up front on their homepage. And believe me, that homepage is not owned by admissions. So we no longer, if the minute we're talking culture, we are talking, as Ganesh said, the entire ecosystem, right? But how do you ensure that everyone on campus actually does understand that culture well? So what we found, we did some research where we looked at faculty assessments of students and correlated it to the performance of those students on campus. So now we're doing this huge correlation coefficient, and it showed us not that there was a high fit, but it was completely random. right? So you have one faculty member assessing in one way, you have another faculty member assessing very differently, and the result is that you are actually not being able to be that equitable anymore to students. So the systems continue in parallel. We continue to rely on existing rubrics, and we keep experimenting with new ones. Back, please. No. Back, please. And one more. That's fine. That's fine. Right, so this whole issue of creating the universe, Ganesh is giving me a gentle hint or maybe a not so gentle hint that I'm running out of time. Hurry it up, Hansa. Yeah, okay. Okay, I will. So this whole issue of creating a university culture, communicating it to every last man jack on campus is something that we as universities are now working at. And this shared understanding, you must understand, it puts the enrollment office at risk when actually you invite students to campus and you have talked to them about this university culture, and then they go out and they meet a laboratory assistant or perhaps a security guard or perhaps faculty who don't actually think that way. So everything that you are saying gets put to test. And so our challenge right now and what we're working on is take that university culture and make every man on campus, every woman on campus really understand it so that it's not just words, but we are walking our talk. And that's one of the big parts. That's how there is culture learning for students when they actually engage with us at universities. The last point on that is that if you don't do that, sometimes when students come to campus, they face a hidden culture. For enrollment teams, that means that we might see them withdrawing, but more importantly, it does mean an unhappy student, and that's not in anyone's interest. Thanks, Ganesh. So the new age admissions team is very diverse. It has to span across all departments, all areas, as Ganesh mentioned. And I think the first bastion really, I'm going to talk about 3 quick themes in that, just a few big trends that we're seeing. The first is faculty to faculty, faculty to teacher, teacher to faculty. Yes, of course, students and initiatives for students are important, but really it is about making sure that we have open gate policies which allow a two-way flow of information between school and university. And the example that I've put up there is Azim Premji, because one of the few initiatives that I know of where universities are equally encouraged to go to schools and see what is happening with them, with their teachers, happens at Azim Premji. They actually have an MA in education and have collaborated with schools, all variety of schools, international, private, government, special needs, in order to ensure that there is a continuous dialogue from school to university. In that group, and here's to your point, there's a special word for counselors. I think we need to open up counselor to counselor interactions. Most universities do have a counseling team, and there is a tremendous flow of information that can happen through them. The other big initiative that is taking off is more one-on-one. And the internet and technology have facilitated that. We're seeing mentoring is on the fly. One-on-one mentoring, alumni to a student, student to a student, faculty to a student. And people are able to carve out time to do initiatives like that more easily than a large initiative. Last word, of course, goes to technology. One of the big themes in terms of engaging the entire ecosystem is around technology. It's not a department that we often talk about, but the question we're getting from students right now is, so what's going to happen in terms of classes? How will you teach us when we come to campus? And a great deal of that answer comes today from the IT department. So we have to bring forth and we have to upfront answer these questions that students have about how will you actually teach us? And IT and technology have a big role to play in that. As admissions, that's one area we're looking at. That means, of course, 3D, it means gamification, it means virtual reality, and bringing that out and sharing that with you all as counselors and as students. We're entering a world in which, in a sense, everyone is a distance learner. It's a world that will continue to some extent. And so it's about the admissions experience, but these are deeper questions about how will you actually teach. And we believe that, that actually tech is a big stakeholder in that. I think that's broadly what I wanted to cover. Thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you, Shilpa and Hansa. Can you bring up the audience, the virtual audience also on screen? And let's open this up. We have about 5 minutes left. Only 5 minutes left for questions. So, yes, please go ahead. We'll take one from the physical audience and one from the virtual audience. Please go ahead. Ma'am.
Firstly, Shilpa and Hansa, wonderful presentation. It was really good. So as you know, high school counselor, I do face this question from students very often. That and we all know that the end result is what the parents and students are looking at. That once we complete our education, what is the kind of placement opportunities available? What I feel is that, and what happens with me is, when I speak to parents, so they say that, okay, whatever you're telling about a university, everything is good, but the end question is, the whole thing is that what is the kind of placement and what is the kind of, opportunities given to my child. And there is a very strong notion that I face at my students that the government colleges and the Delhi universities and the IITs of the world are the best. And other private universities, howsoever good they are, I mean, you should look at only as backup options. So what I feel is that we speak in a language that is more understandable by parents firstly, and then we take them to our language. It is just like that if a person only knows Hindi and we want to ask him to learn English and we're saying, dude, it's a very good language, you should learn it. He will not understand a single word. We first say in Hindi ki English ek achhi language hai, aap seekho. And then once he starts learning English, then he starts understanding the nuances of it.
So what was the question?
So my question here is, and I think so, I mean, this is something which the universities can work on also, that you frame your communication in a way which is like eye-catchy, and it looks as if it's fulfilling the end result, end aspiration of the student. And then you say that, okay, whatever we are offering is helping you in fulfilling that.
Okay, that's still not a question, but a recommendation.
Yes.
But in 30 seconds, because I want to take one question here. You can take this one. You can use this because they cannot hear otherwise on Zoom.
I think you've answered your own question in a sense. One has to look at the evidence. We are not simply stating something, but the numbers, the data, etc., all actually support the idea that there are different careers for different people, and there is no one size fits all, right? So that's what we're actually propagating, that we go individualized education as appropriate for the student, and the evidence is all there.
I think it's a great recommendation for universities to take on board the comment that you've made. Let's see if there's a question from the virtual audience as well. Sorry, can I just, is there any hand raised in our virtual audience? If there isn't, then we have another question here from Palak.
Yes, so
Yes.
I have a question for Shilpa you. So you mentioned, quote unquote, that there should be an effective engagement with counselors, right? So I think this is a black box question in all university reps' mind, respecting that, it's a clutter at both ends. There's so many universities. For us also, there are so many counselors, right? So in your opinion and suggestion, quote unquote, again, what is the most effective way to engage with counselors, also respecting the information that we have to share and it's not cluttered?
I think whoever I've been speaking with, and I've been telling that I mean, as school counselors, we have a very strong community, right? We have WhatsApp groups with all of us, and most of us are happy to come together to do fairs, right? Similarly, we want universities to come together with a similar school spirit and meet with the students. Because honestly, again, like I said, children are zoomed out, we are zoomed out, too many emails. So I think creating a community and having a theme. I feel that sometimes, and I'm going to be talking about it in the next session also, but having like a real theme. Don't just say that I want to present my university. Anybody can look at your university, but just kind of effective programming is what I want you all to really come together and do.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. If I delay the end of our session, I will be thrown out, because I have been trying to set some nurturing discipline in the last one day. So we have completely run out of time. Thank you so much for being here. We are delighted to see a packed house on behalf of Shilpa, Hansa, myself. And if there are questions that are unanswered, please collect a business card from each one of the panelists. For our virtual attendees, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Is there anything in the chat box?
They can add us on IC3 app.
Yeah, you can also communicate on the app. The app will be accessible. And thank you. We have 67 friends who joined us virtually, and you filled this room as well. So we are grateful for your presence. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.